Hi, St. Paul's families. Thanks for joining us again. Our school board met on August 6th, and they put together a detailed plan for how we will operate this year. And we put it all in this operating handbook that was attached to you in an email. And you'll notice that it's quite lengthy. So what we would like to do is, in this video, not talk about a lot of the things that we talked about in the last video. A lot of things are staying the same. But we wanted to highlight a few of the things that are different in some ways or new in some ways, just so you're caught up to speed. First thing I wanted to say, though, is just to say thank you to all of our school families and our school community. Around the country and around the world, schools and school communities are getting torn apart by what's happening here. We understand that every decision is not going to be pleasing everyone, and I think they understand that too. But what's different here is our families and how our families have responded to it. Not just the families that appreciated the plan, but the families that also disagreed and sometimes even greatly disagreed on either side of the plan. The communication that you've had with us and the leadership has been so loving, so Christ-centered, and it's just been a breath of fresh air as we've been doing this planning. So thank you so much for that great communication. All right, now on to the new things. The first thing that kind of came to our attention, this is based on a lot of feedback we received from people, was the chapel. And while we want to be together in chapel as much as we possibly can, we thought that with the cohorts that we established for the bubbles, if you remember that last time, it's actually above here, we wanted to keep those intact as much as possible while the cases are still where they're at. So we decided to start the year doing Livestream Chapel. So what we'll do is we'll still have one classroom actually go into the church still at a time, but the rest of the classrooms will be in their classrooms and the service will be live streamed to them, where the pastor or one of the teachers will be giving that chapel devotion. So that's one change. Another change would be in the before and after school care program. So this was, I think in orientation, you got a little bit of a warning about this, and we got some great feedback about this, so thank you. What we ended up going with then is in the after school and before school program, grades 3 to 8 would be required to wear a mask when they're indoors. So not just when they're out at the playground, of course not. I think the other exception would be the large gymnasium when they're able to be distant from each other. But when they're together for a long period of time like that, we wanted to make sure that the bubbles were kept, their integrity was kept. So we see that as a possible mixture. That was one of the reasons. We also see that because aftercare is a choice, whereas school is a little bit less of a choice, that we could probably operate this way as well. And then it's also a shorter period of time, and I think that's where a lot of people run into some issues, where the thought of wearing a mask all day is a big deal, but for a shorter period of time, it reduces that burden. This is kind of a big important, I should say, page. It's the operating phases that we will be doing, because I think a big common question we received was, what if? What if, for example, Pennington County, which has been doing comparatively pretty well compared to a lot of other parts of the country, what if we have our big spike? What if what happened in Arizona or Florida or even a few months ago in New York happens in Rapid City, South Dakota? So we wanted to kind of think about that a little bit, and what we decided that is if local cases increase, therefore our safety measures would increase as well. So this document here is kind of a show. It kind of shows it all here of how we would respond based on the local community spread. It made sense to make decisions based on local community spread instead of just going with our gut reaction. Base it off of what is the level of risk to our families, because as local spread goes up, the level of risk goes up as well. So we are actually currently in this phase 2 here, and you'll notice that phase 1 and phase 2 together is essentially the video we sent out last month with the 2 changes I just mentioned, the before and after school care and the chapel procedures that are different. Other than that, if you watched that video last month, this is pretty much what we're doing. But we wanted to be prepared just in case the case numbers increased in our local area. So we set a threshold at 30 cases per day. Right now we've been averaging about 10 cases per day. And then once cases reach 30 cases per day, that's when the increased safety measures take place. And then once you get to 60, then increased safety measures take place. And then 90 is when we would consider going distance learning for everyone. And I just wanted to make this clear with a few graphs, if you will allow me. This is actually in the appendices in our handbook. So this top chart here kind of gives you an idea of where we're at and where new phases would kick in. So this is actually the Pennington County data from the Department of Health. In the handbook, you actually can click at the link and look at the data yourself if you would like. This orange trend line is the 5-day average of new positive tests in Pennington County. So as long as positive tests are between 3 and 30 per day, we will be in phase 2. And you'll notice that we actually would have been in phase 2 since mid-May. Like, it's kind of just been bumping around, but basically staying level throughout these last few months. So nothing might happen. We might just stay in phase 2 for a significant amount of time. And the things we have in place right now would just kind of stay there. But we also wanted to have a path to move forward just in case something was going to be happening. So for example, we adjusted the Arizona state cases. You know, Arizona had a spike of the last couple months here. What if that happened in Pennington County? So we adjusted that to our county's population per capita. So if Arizona happened in South Dakota, we would have started phase 3 at this point of their spike. And then you'll notice that phase 4, where it says we would maybe consider grades 3 to 8 distance learning, that is where we would maybe have gotten to that point if we were Arizona. So I wanted to show this to you because all the phases that we list aren't a guarantee. In fact, it never really got close to phase 5 here, where we would consider full distance learning for all the students. Just to maybe put your minds at ease a little bit, is it impossible? No, it could happen. But with the thresholds we have set up here, it seems unlikely that it would happen that we would go full distance learning for all the students of our school for an extended period of time. Wanted to talk a little bit about masks. Obviously, this is a bigger topic, so I wanted just to discuss this a little bit. So you'll notice that the mask policy in phases 1 and 2 is pretty much what we shared in the video. They'll be welcomed in the classrooms for sure. And then phase 3 and above then over here is when that risk increases, that's when the masks would be required in certain classrooms. And we explained in the previous page on page 7 why we're kind of treating it a little bit differently, so I won't get into that too much. And I just want to have one comment here because you can read this for yourself. My one comment is that there will just need to be some understanding on both sides of this issue. So when in situations where masks aren't required, there'll just need to be some understanding from those that would like to require masks that these are some choices that these families are making. And then when we get to the point where masks would be required in certain situations, the families that would be required to wear them that wouldn't otherwise wear them just need to have that understanding that they're doing this, and a lot of those families that would really appreciate that extra safety measure for their family. So I think just a lot of understanding to go around, and both sides will just need to be having that understanding as well. So that is my prayer when it comes to the mask issue. Obviously the mask issue, you're well aware, is something that gets talked about a lot. So just a couple more things then. This one will be quick. This is something a lot of the Rapid City schools are doing, so we're going to hand this out on the first day. It's a student symptom screening checklist. This is a good checklist for you. You do not need to turn this into our school personnel each day, but this is a checklist for you. I'd say keep it on your fridge or keep it close by and do this every morning just to ensure that we do not send sick kids to school, because that is obviously symptomatic students would definitely be more at risk of spreading any sickness, but also COVID-19 too. And then this was a very popular question. What do we do if there is sickness in our school? This chart is from the Department of Health. They wanted to make it very clear that not every sickness is going to be COVID-19. We have students that are sick and stay home quite often throughout normal school years, I guess you could say. There's the flu, there's cold, there's strep throat, asthma, seasonal allergies. And a lot of those do overlap with COVID-19. So I think we just need to understand that we're not going to have a major panic every time we see a symptom. At the same time, we want to be careful. So that's why we're going to be, communicating with health professionals about what is the best course of action when sicknesses do arise. This chart from the Department of Health I thought was pretty helpful, at least for us. So you'll notice, and it kind of takes a little bit of getting used to and reading it. You'll notice that there's some symptoms here. One is red, the fever. These other ones are blue. And what they're saying is when none of these things are in play, you could just kind of follow your school policy, so that the fever, for example, you exclude for at least 24 hours. And then after that fever is resided for 24 hours, then you could be allowed back into school if none of these screen things are in play. I think the one that's most likely to come into play would be if our area became like a high community transmission area. And I think they're going to be using a different threshold than our thresholds are. So I can't tell you exactly what that is. We'll be in communication with them, the Department of Health, about that. So if that's the case, though, if they have a fever and we're, at a high transmission, that's when we would exclude that student actually for either 10 days or until they would get a negative test to show that this is not COVID, this is another sickness. And that would actually be the same thing, as you can see, green plus blue, any of these symptoms too. If any of these green conditions were in play, that would also be the case. So with that, that's all I have to share for you, but please ask questions. I just wanted to keep this one shorter than my last one. So make sure you email me with any questions. If you have any comments too, it'd be appreciating to hear this. We're not pretending that this is our final plan. Data keeps coming in. We understand that the situation's changing. We're learning a lot about how this virus works. So there might be some updates to this plan throughout the school year as we keep going along. So we just pray for patience, and my last thing I want to share is that all the teachers, we're super excited. We've been having these home visits lately, and it just gets us really excited to start the year. And I think the families also seem very excited to start as well. So can't wait to see you. Take care.